Welcome back to CIA Declassified. To understand the scale of JMWAVE, you have to step into the humid, tropical, paranoid atmosphere of South Florida following the failed Bay of Pigs invasion. The year is 1961. The Cold War has reached a boiling point just 90 miles off the coast. The Central Intelligence Agency needed a command center that was close enough to strike but hidden enough to deny. They found their answer in Building 25 at the former Naval Air Station Richmond, a patch of land leased by the University of Miami. Imagine a city gripped by a fever. Miami wasn't just a place for retirees and tourists anymore. It was a teeming nest of spies, exiles, and soldiers of fortune. Every marina had a boat that didn't belong to a fisherman. Every quiet suburban home might be a safe house for a sabotage team. The agency didn't just have a presence here. They had an ecosystem. They were the silent landlords of South Florida, operating with a budget that rivaled the city's own infrastructure. The palm trees and neon lights provided a vibrant mask for a machinery of war that operated in the dead of night, launching missions into the dark waters of the Florida Straits. This was an era where the lines between domestic law enforcement and international espionage simply vanished. The local police knew to look the other way when blacked-out vans sped toward the coast, and the university staff knew not to ask why Zenith employees never seemed to be making any electronics. It was a grand, dangerous theater of the absurd where the stakes were nothing less than nuclear annihilation. As we peel back the layers of JMWAVE, we see a portrait of an America that was willing to turn its own backyard into a battlefield, creating a legacy of shadows that still haunts the corridors of power today. The headquarters itself operated under the cover of Zenith Technical Enterprises. To the average student or resident, Building 25 was just a quiet research facility. In reality, it was the logistical heart of Operation Mongoose. The station's reach was staggering. It operated over 300 front companies across South Florida, marinas, real estate firms, and even hunting camps. The shadow economy wasn't just for show. It allowed the agency to funnel $50 million a year into the local economy while masking the purchase of explosives, high-speed boats, and surveillance gear. The station's fleet made it the third largest naval power in the Caribbean at the time, trailing only the United States and Cuba. Why the name JMWAVE? The station got its name from its official CIA cryptonym, and the agency's naming convention, the JM prefix, was a geographic digraph assigned to operations and assets in the Caribbean and Cuba. The wave portion was the specific station designation, a fitting title for an installation that would soon control a fleet of ships rivaling sovereign navies. Under the leadership of Theodore Shackley, JMWAVE became a city within a city. At its peak, it employed over 400 staff officers and commanded an army of 15,000 Cuban exiles. Let's look at the verifiable record and the voices from the declassified vaults. JMWAVE was the largest CIA station in the world outside of the main headquarters in Langley. The station operated a massive fleet of motherships and high-speed V-20 boats for maritime sabotage raids. Records show that Theodore Shackley used the station to coordinate with the mafia for various assassination attempts on Fidel Castro. The University of Miami received lease payments from the CIA while maintaining a policy of public denial. Documentation confirms the station was responsible for Operation Tilt, a mission to extract Soviet officers with nuclear intelligence. JMWAVE operatives were given immunity from local law enforcement, with case officers regularly pulling agents out of jail. The station maintained its own polygraph and interrogation units on site at the university campus. Records verify the station managed a secret air wing consisting of C-46 and C-54 transport planes operating out of Opelika, JMWAVE possessed its own dedicated signals intelligence unit to intercept Cuban military transmissions. Documentation shows the station funded and directed Alpha 66, one of the most aggressive anti-Castro paramilitary groups. The station's arsenal included specialized silent weaponry and experimental poisons developed by the scariest division within the CIA, the Technical Services Division. Audits reveal the CIA owned and operated a chain of motels across Florida to house exile commandos between missions. The station used a coded commercial radio broadcast system to signal agents inside Cuba. Records show JMWAVE managed over 100 safe houses in the greater Miami area simultaneously. The station utilized the Everglades as a secret training ground for guerrilla warfare. Internal memos confirm that the station had a direct hotline to the Attorney General's office to resolve legal entanglements. JMWAVE monitored the mail and phone calls of Cuban Americans suspected of pro-revolutionary sympathies. Declassified logs show the station coordinated with the U.S. Coast Guard to ensure blind spots for agency vessels. The station operated a specialized weapons cache buried in the mangroves of the Florida Keys. Records show the CIA used JMWAVE to conduct covert biological testing on sugar crops intended for export to Cuba. Documentation confirms that the station employed local Florida civilian mechanics to service its ghost fleet without them knowing the true owner. Internal audits verify that JMWAVE created its own custom postage and documentation system to bypass standard federal mail tracking. The station maintained a black site medical facility in Coral Gables for treating wounded commandos in secret. Records prove the agency used JMWAVE to monitor the movements of foreign diplomats visiting the South Florida area. The station coordinated the infiltration of the Cuban Ministry of Interior using assets recruited within Miami. Declassified memos show the station used specialized submersible tow sleds to drop agents off the Cuban coast without surfacing. A quote from a declassified internal audit: "The air gap between the university and the agency was as thin as the walls of Building 25. A quote from Ray Klein, CIA Deputy Director for Intelligence: "It was a real anomaly. It was run as if it were in a foreign country, yet most of our agents were in the state of Florida." A quote from Theodore Shackley, again, that was the station chief: "JMWAVE was the focus of the largest paramilitary effort the CIA has ever undertaken." A quote from a declassified operations memo dated 1962: "Our mission was to create maximum pressure on the Castro regime through a coordinated program of economic and physical sabotage." A quote from a declassified logistics division summary: "The logistics of JMWAVE required a total integration of local commerce and international espionage." And a declassified security branch report: "Operational security at Zenith Technical Enterprises was maintained through a complex web of cover stories and financial layers." End quote. When you look at the declassified files for JMWAVE, the most glaring voids appear in the sections detailing the specific operational intersections between the CIA and domestic entities. The government heavily cites FOIA exemptions B1, B3, and B7 Section D. Exemption B1 refers to information classified to protect national security or foreign policy. B3 refers to information specifically exempted from disclosure by statute, in this case, the CIA Act of 1949, which shields agency internal structures and personnel. Most intriguingly, B7 Section D protects the identity of confidential sources, including those who provided information under an expressed or implied assurance of confidentiality. What does this likely mean? These redactions most certainly hide the extent of the CIA's domestic recruitment of high-ranking Florida law enforcement and judicial officials. My theory is that the CIA had a parallel judiciary in South Florida where certain judges and police chiefs were on a secret payroll to ensure that JMWAVE operatives could commit serious crimes, ranging from weapons trafficking to accidental homicides during training. without ever facing a public courtroom. This would be a massive violation of the US Constitution, which is why the confidential sources in these files remain buried under black ink decades later. Again, just my theory. Now, as far as conspiracy theories go and speculation, the secrecy of JMWAVE has birthed decades of intense speculation, such as the JFK connection. Many researchers believe that disgruntled JMWAVE operatives and exile groups angry over the lack of air support at the Bay of Pigs were involved in the assassination of John F. Kennedy. This theory suggests the station's expertise in deniable hits and its close ties to the mob were turned inward against the president himself in a plot of revenge, utilizing the very snipers the agency had trained to kill Castro. The Watergate link. It is not speculation but fact that several of the Watergate burglars were former JMWAVE assets. The conspiracy theory lies in whether the burglary was actually a JMWAVE-led operation designed to protect the station's secrets from being exposed by changing political tides in Washington, effectively using the plumbers as a cleanup crew for the agency's past sins to prevent a full exposure of the station's illegal domestic reach. Then there's the missing nuclear assets theory. This speculation is that during the Cuban Missile Crisis, JMWAVE teams successfully stole or sabotaged Soviet tactical nukes on the ground. This theory suggests that the real reason the Soviets backed down wasn't just diplomacy, but the realization that the CIA had successfully infiltrated their most secure missile silos in Cuba and held the potential to detonate them remotely or turn them against their own handlers. And then there's the weather manipulation theory. Some speculate that JMWAVE worked on clandestine cloud seeding projects over the Caribbean to create localized hurricanes or floods intending to destroy the Cuban sugar harvest and trigger an internal famine. This theory suggests the station's technical cover was a front for advanced meteorological warfare that could cripple an island nation's economy while maintaining plausible deniability under the guise of natural disasters. Was JMWAVE a success? Tactically, it was a mixed bag of high-risk maneuvers. While it successfully gathered immense amounts of intelligence during the missile crisis and conducted hundreds of raids, it failed in its primary objective, the removal of Fidel Castro. Tactically, however, the station proved that a massive deniable military force could be managed with civilian-level logistics. The agency learned how to operate a navy without a port and an army without a base, creating a blueprint for the shadow wars of the late 20th century. The sheer tactical audacity of running a war room from a college campus remains a masterclass in clandestine audacity, even if the final objective remained elusive. Strategically, it was precedent setting for the deep state. It proved that a massive covert infrastructure could be maintained within the United States for years, effectively turning an American city into a staging ground for foreign regime change without the public ever catching on. Strategically, JMWAVE transformed the CIA from a purely intelligence-gathering agency into a paramilitary powerhouse. This shift permanently altered the balance of power in Washington, giving the agency its own foreign policy capabilities that often bypass the State Department. The strategic legacy of JMWAVE is the normalization of domestic front operations, a tool that continues to be the backbone of statecraft in the shadows. As far as operational and technological breakthroughs go, front company financial scrubbing and cryptonomy. The station perfected the art of cryptonomy, a shadow economy where millions of dollars were laundered through legitimate-looking businesses to fund operations. Current use: this is now the standard model for the intelligence community to fund clandestine activities globally. It is currently utilized by the Special Activities Center to maintain thousands of non-official cover companies worldwide, ensuring that black budgets for sensitive missions remain untraceable by traditional federal audits or hostile foreign intelligence services. High-speed maritime insertion and specialized hull design. JMWAVE developed specialized hull designs for silent, high-speed night insertions in tropical waters, moving commandos onto beaches without detection. Current use, these designs directly influenced the modern Navy SEAL Mark V Special Operations craft and the Special Operations Command stealth insertion boats. Today, this technology is used for low-profile coastal infiltration in the South China Sea and for counter-narcotics dark target interceptions where speed and a low radar cross-section are paramount. Psychological warfare via clandestine radio and signal distortion. The station utilized high-powered transmitters to broadcast Radio Swan, a propaganda tool that blurred the lines between news and psyops. Current use, this evolved into modern digital influence operations. The techniques of signal masking and narrative mirroring developed at JMWAVE are now used by military information operations teams to deploy social media bot farms and deepfake audio to shape public opinion and modern conflict zones, effectively controlling the information space without a single physical shot being fired. And paramilitary training standardization for proxy forces. The Miami station created the first comprehensive commando training curriculum designed specifically for non-U.S. proxies and irregular forces. Current use, this serves as the foundational doctrine for the Green Berets and the CIA's global response staff. The ability to rapidly turn a civilian population into an effective guerrilla force was a JMWAVE innovation, and it is the same methodology currently used to train partner forces in Eastern Europe and the Middle East for unconventional warfare against superior standing armies. JMWAVE was deactivated in 1968, but its spirit never left Miami. The station proved that for the CIA, the law of the land is often secondary to the mission of the day. The Miami station wasn't just a place, it was a precedent, a warning that the shadow of the deep state can fall even over the brightest beaches. When Building 25 was eventually closed, the equipment was moved and the front companies were dissolved, but the social and political infrastructure of South Florida remained forever altered by the presence of this invisible giant. The legacy of the legacy of JMWAVE lives on in the sprawling intelligence industrial complex we see today. It was here in the sweltering heat of the Sunshine State that the agency learned how to disappear into the noise of American life. They learned that a university, a marina, or a quiet electronics firm could be the ultimate camouflage. This operation erased the boundary between the frontier and the homeland, proving that the tools of foreign intervention could be sharpened in our own backyard. As we look at modern clandestine operations, we see the echoes of JMWAVE in every untraceable financial transaction and every deniable paramilitary action. The war in the shadows didn't end with the closure of the station. It simply became more refined, moving from the physical swamp to the digital ether. Thanks for listening. Keep your signals clear and your covers deep. Always verify your sources, secure your communications, and never trust a front company with a generic name. And remember, the most profound truths are often the ones hiding in plain sight. Join us next time as we examine J.G. Hawk, the silent sentinels, and the high-altitude reconnaissance of mainland China. The edge of space, the 1960s. Above the bamboo curtain, the CIA's bravest pilots fly missions that technically don't exist. We'll uncover the technical marvels and harrowing risk of J.G. Hawk, the secret high-altitude reconnaissance program that peered into the heart of a nuclear-arming China. It's a story of aviation genius and diplomatic brinkmanship at 70,000 feet. Join us next time for The Dragon's Eye. In the meantime, I'll see you in the archives.